Hey everyone, so today we are learning how to clean an entire pork and butterfly it open basically. So I'm going to be stuffing this with like an apple fennel stuffing that I'll do in another video, but right now I'm just teaching you how to do this part. So the only I actually remember this like in the middle of already almost doing it. So the only thing that's missing is this was attached. I cut this part off here in the back because this part, the fat kind of goes all the way through the pork loin here. So it's too fatty for a stuffed pork, but this is something that I will use for like shredded pork later. So I'm just gonna put that in a freezer bag and I will freeze that to use it at a later date. So the first thing we need to do is look at this pork loin here, and we need to see if there's a chain attached. Sometimes there's a chain and sometimes there's not. It doesn't really look to me like there is a chain, so what I'm gonna do first is I'm gonna start just kind of taking the fat off, and then underneath that fat there's gonna be silver skin. So the fat you can kind of just take off and you don't have to worry, well, we already got to the pork there. So you kind of wanna just use your knife and make sure you're not puncturing any of the actual pork. And sometimes you find the chain after you get all the fat off, because sometimes it's just so covered in fat that you can't see it. And the chain meat for a pork is not something you could really use. Now, if I was cleaning a beef tenderloin, the chain meat can be used for a stew or kebabs or something like that. But with pork, it's really, really not good to use it. So like I said, I'm just trying to get most of this fat off here. And usually I use a boning knife, but this knife, I don't even know technically, I like real chef here, went to culinary school, I don't even know what kind of knife this is. It's like a chef's knife, but not really because you can't chop with it, but I really like it. It's really sharp and I've been using it to debone my meats lately. So I'm just using this knife, but typically I use a boning knife. And then another little thing about safety is that you want to make sure that underneath this cutting board you have a wet paper towel that's wrung out or something so it's not moving all around. And secondly, if your cutting board does not fit in your dishwasher, you want to make sure you have a pot of boiling water ready to wash the cutting board with, because simple hot water and soap is not going to kill the bacteria that is going to be on this cutting board. The only thing that kills the bacteria is cooking it to the proper temperature, which is 145 degrees for pork. Okay, so I think I'm finding a chain here. So I'm going to continue with this. And it's much, much more cost effective to buy a huge pork like this and do this yourself versus having the butcher do it for you. So that's kind of what I'm doing right now because I can do it. So that's why I'm teaching you guys how to do it. It's actually really fun for me. I really enjoy doing this. So now the silver skin here, so if you can see, it kind of is like fibrous. What you want to do is you want to take a piece of the fat and you want to pull up on this and kind of point your knife in this direction. And again, you need a really, really sharp knife for this. You don't want to be messing around with a dull knife because you're likely going to cut yourself. So take this. Sometimes there's so much fat that it's hard to even get to the silver skin without cutting some of the pork. All right, that needs to come off. So this can be used for pork chops. This can be used for shredded pork. If you want like a leaner shredded pork, you could just make a pork, like a roast pork in the oven. You can make like cuts in it and put spices and different herbs in there. Like I said, I'm butterflying this one open as soon as I get it clean. So I'm just gonna continue this. And you know, pork can be served pink. As long as it's 145 degrees, once it's done cooking, you can serve it. I'm using a cutting board that I can fit in my dishwasher, so I don't have to worry about boiling water for it. Another thing is you don't want to use a wooden cutting board for anything that you're using anything raw on, because when you cut with a wooden cutting board, you get all that juice kind of gets down in the pores of the board, and it's really not sanitary to use that. I also don't really prefer using glass cutting boards. They dull your knives and they just sound really scary. So I'm probably going to be doing a knife skills course or a knife skills class that I'm going to be posting on my YouTube channel. So I'll go over all that in that class, but so almost done. Just take all of that fat off. Because, you know, sometimes like when you're dealing with fattier, some like different cuts of beef or pork, you want some of the fat on there as, you know, marbling to kind of give it flavor. But when you're making something like this, you don't want hardly any fat on it. So that looks really clean. It looks really good. So now we're gonna go ahead and take this chain off because I did find it. It was underneath the fat. So I'm gonna go over here and I am going to I probably should do it this way so you guys can see it better. So it's right here. So this is not really the way that I cut usually. So anyway, so it kind of actually starts to just take itself off because it's not supposed to be there. This is kind of like half on and half not, the chain of this. So we're kind of gonna just try not to waste a lot of that good pork here. And we can even just pick up our knife and just do it this way. I'm losing a little bit of meat here, but I'd rather lose that meat than have my customers or anyone that I'm doing this for to have, you know, a nice, beautiful roulade that's supposed to be lean and not chewy or anything like that, not tough. So I'm taking more fat off than you normally would if you were just doing a roast or something like that. All right, so this is ready to go. And I'm actually going to probably cut this in half and make a roulade out of each half because it's a little bit too big to maneuver and video it. So I'm gonna take this and just cut this in half, and we'll do this half in a second. We'll start with this half. So what we wanna do basically is, let me try to tilt this without touching the camera. There we go, that's better. All right, so what we wanna do, kind of a little more fat here I wanna get rid of. So you wanna take this, okay? And you basically wanna cut it in half, but not all the way, you don't wanna go all the way through, okay? So I'm just gonna take my knife very carefully and just open it, basically, okay? Just making an opening here. Very, very carefully. And again, you need a very sharp knife to do this, or you're gonna be disservicing yourself by trying to do it with a dull knife. All right, that opened up beautifully. Okay, so now that's basically butterflied open, but now we want that even thinner to make our roulade. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna go ahead and bookmark each side open, okay? So we're gonna take our knife. I like this knife too because it's long and it kind of is like the whole length of the pork. So I'm gonna take this and I'm gonna just press into the flesh of the meat here. And I'm going to just very carefully open it up further. And sometimes you can get a hole. I even get holes, that's okay. It's no big deal. When you're baking it in the oven, it'll kind of seal itself with the filling in it. Beautiful pork here. This is working great. We're just gonna cut little cuts here. Move over, there we go. To open it up further, just like that. And now we're gonna do this side. So now we're gonna take this side and open this side up. Again, doing the same thing. You're gonna take the length of the knife and just basically just see, oh, actually you can see really well here how it's working. Just very, very carefully cutting it open. Slow and steady. Actually, this works to my advantage. I can see the other side. Look at that. I'm using the camera now. There we go. There we go. And there you have an opened pork that is beautiful for stuffing. This piece here is a little thicker right here. You can go ahead and use a meat mallet if you really wanted to kind of get that even flatter, but this will work just fine. So I'm gonna roll this up, put it over here, and we're gonna do our other piece. see if we have any more fat on here I want to get rid of. And you can actually make your pork loin and stuff it. Or I'm sorry, do this to your pork loin, get it all ready, stuff it with whatever stuffing you want, and then you can actually wrap it up in saran wrap and stick it in your freezer and then take it out when you're ready to bake it. So that way you have a meal that's already ready to go. If you maybe get a big pork and you get two, you know, you're a family of 4 or 5 and you only need a little bit, do the whole thing, stuff it, and then freeze the other half. Now, the reason I tell you not to freeze it when it's already cooked is because then you're gonna be cooking it again, and then it could potentially get dried out. It's still gonna taste good, the flavor will be there, but it'll be a little bit more dried out. So if you can freeze it at the raw state, it's actually much better. And then you would just let it thaw out in your refrigerator, and then when it's thawed out, you would put it in the oven and bake it as usual. All right, so here we go. We're gonna take our pork, we're gonna cut this in half, just like this. There we go. Pretty easy. Okay, just like that. Now we're gonna take, again, we're gonna go take 1/2 and we're gonna bookmark it open. I don't even know where I got that term from, but someone taught it to me somewhere along the line in my career. I think that's the proper term. Not very fancy around here, I just get it done. All right. I almost just went too thin there. All right, let's move this over. There we go. Now, you can kind of see from the bottom here that there's a piece here that kind of needs to be opened up. So what I usually just do is I just take little cuts here and open it like that. Okay, so now you want to take the other side, do the same thing. This side's a little thicker, and of course it's thicker up here than it is down here. So you have to be really careful and take your time. And again, this camera is doing a really good thing here because I can see what I'm doing from this side. All right, there we go. Perfect. I got a little tiny, little itty bitty hole there, but it's covered up when you press down on it. And there you go. You have your other piece ready to go, ready to stuff and roll up and bake. So stay tuned for another video on how to do that part, and I hope you guys have a great day and cook something good.